All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Raymond Bro. I'm a utilities engineer with the Energy Division at the California Public Utilities Commission, and I'm happy to help introduce the Q4 2025 Integration Capacity Analysis, or ICA, workshop. I am also joined by my coworker, Angelica, who will be piloting the slides. And as noted, this workshop will be recorded. Great. Some quick logistics. All attendees are muted. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise your hand function and a host will unmute you. If you'd rather type in the chat, you may do so and the utilities will respond there as well, or questions can be read aloud from the chat and responded to verbally. Reminder, please mute yourself when you're done asking or you will be muted, just so we don't have conflicting mics. And another note, attendees do not have the ability to see each other for some reason. So if you would like your presence known and the presence of others known, you can put your name and organization in the chat for those that are not participants, or panelists rather. Next slide, please, Angelica. All right, so our agenda today is introduction by Energy Division from 9 to 9:10. SDG&E will be presenting from 9:10 to 9:55. I believe SCE will be presenting from 9:55 to 10:55. We'll have a very short break from 10:55 to 11, and then from 11 to noon will be PG&E, and then any closing remarks. Next slide, please, Angelica. All right, and as a reminder for the background of why we're all here, on October 23rd, 2024, CPUC issued decision 24-10-030, which included various orders for improvements to ICA, namely ordering paragraph 34, which created the biannual ICA reports, ordering paragraph 35, which established the requirement for these quarterly workshops to discuss ICA issues and also ICA remediation plans, as well as any stakeholder feedback on those remediation plans. And ordering paragraph 36, which required the utilities to file a Tier 3 advice letter with a remediation plan for known issues with Load and Generation ICA. Next slide, please, Angelica. Since then, the first three workshops were held on March 7th, June 27th, and October 1st, 2025, and the first two batches of biannual ICA reports were released on January 31st and July 31st. The Tier 3 advice letters containing the remediation plans were filed on August 26th and were suspended effective September 25th. The next step from here is, upon disposition of the Tier 3 advice letters, the utilities will implement the approved remediation plans and continue to use the biannual reports and quarterly workshops to provide updates on their progress. I want to note that the advice letters are still suspended as of this time, and the next step that is not listed here is the resolution dealing with them will be released to the R.21-06-017 service list with notice before it is voted open for comment period and eventual voting. Next slide, please. All right, I am a few minutes early, but I think that's for the best. And with that, I would like to hand off to San Diego Gas and Electric.
Great, thank you, Raymond. Just to be clear, am I able to advance slides? I didn't see anything change on my end.
The slides are currently being driven by my coworker, Angelica, but if you would like to share screen and pilot just your slide deck, that is fine as well. All right.
I'm perfectly
just ask
fine.
Angelica to move the slides forward.
No problem. I just wanted to confirm. Thank you so much. And thank you, Angelica. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Sweeney, and I'm a Principal Distribution Planning Policy Advisor at San Diego Gas and Electric. I'll be presenting today the updates to SDG&E's Integration Capacity Analysis. Next slide, please, Angelica. Here's a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. I'll be presenting an update on SDG&E's latest activities related to the ICA, and we'll provide an update on the status of our data validation efforts for both load and generation. I'll then provide a summary on our next steps, followed by a list of available ICA resources, and then we will open the floor to questions and discussion. Next slide, please. I know that Raymond provided a little bit of background, but I will touch on a few specifics here. As required in ordering paragraph 29 of decision 24-10-030, SDG&E has been working on the integration of details on 5 limiting criteria into both our ICA portal and our user guide. Although some of this data had previously been provided via downloadable data files, this required extra steps for users to identify and understand the limiting criteria. By adding this information directly into the pop-up windows in the ICA portal, the transparency and usability of this data will be enhanced. SDG&E is also integrating these details correspondingly into our user guide. Other recent activities and work streams that our team has been engaging in include providing responses to an informal data inquiry from Energy Division in early November and working toward the fulfillment of the requirements of ordering paragraph 39. Although OP 39 is not due until December 15th of 2026, the requirements have been substantially completed with just a final couple of items being worked on at this time. SDG&E has also received 0 customer inquiries related to our ICA since our last workshop was held on October 1st. Next slide, please, Angelica. SDG&E's data validation efforts are summarized in this figure, showing segment-level results from the load integration capacity analysis as of the end of November 2025. SDG&E has thoroughly investigated its load ICA data and made significant improvements in our ICA modeling over the past several years, as outlined in our previous reports and workshops. This has translated into a significant reduction in the number of line segments showing 0 load hosting capacity. As I said, I think in our last workshop, I know that this view isn't really a surprise to those of you that have attended these workshops since the start of this year. This is our typical format for reporting out the nodal results showing the current hosting capacity across our distribution system. These values are expected to fluctuate, of course, from month to month as new load interconnection requests are received and other system configuration changes are made. Next slide, please. To illustrate how load ICA values present on a more circuit level view, SDG&E has prepared this figure. We feel that sometimes this view can be helpful since the nodal data sometimes impacts the way results are represented. For example, if certain circuits have a very high number of nodes. So this is just an alternate perspective. Next slide, please. And finally, SDG&E also produced a generation graph for ICA results showing the distribution at the circuit level. Again, like I said, I know these graphs will be very familiar to those of you that have joined us for previous workshops, but today's updated figures reflect the latest data through the end of November 2025. Next slide, thank you. For next steps, SDG&E will continue the implementation of improvements and updates to the ICA portal and resources. This will include a completion of a variety of refinements and additions, including those outlined in both OP 29 as well as OP 39. Our next biannual report will be delivered on January 31st of next year. As always, here is a link to the SDG&E ICA portal and a contact email for any ICA related questions. I know this is short and sweet, Raymond, but that concludes our presentation today. Thank you for your time and attention, and we're happy to open the floor now to questions or discussions.
Are there any questions from attendees? If so, please raise your hand or type in chat. Well, it looks like there are no questions. We are, 40 minutes ahead of schedule already? So we're doing really well on time, everybody. Thank you. SC, I believe you were presenting next.
Yeah, here.
Would you like
Raymond?
to take this time to start early, or would you like to potentially wait?
I'm just checking that we have all of our folks. This is Ari from SC. You can hear me, right, Raymond?
Yes, I can hear you, Ari. Thank you.
Okay, I do have Carly on the line, and I do have Assad. Those are our main presenters. We also have a few team members on the line as well for backup on questions. I'm not sure if we have everybody because we were scheduled for 9:55, but we can kick off, and hopefully others from our team will join as they can. So thank you, everybody. Oh, I guess maybe we could advance, Angelica, to the SCE slides. All right. And then, yes, so this is Southern California Edison's presentation. Thank you all for attending. We can go to the next slide. Now, we're going to be going over three main topics, and I'll be handing over to Carly just in a moment. We'll be talking about updates. We'll also be talking about a remediation update, which is linked to the advice letter we submitted in August. That has not yet been approved, but we are moving forward on that anyway. And then we'll also have an update on our external portal, which we affectionately refer to as Dr. Pep. Before we get to that, and then of course Q&A, but Q&A is also welcome throughout using are we using is it the Q&A feature, Raymond, or the chat feature? What are we using for dropping questions in text?
We'll be using chat or raising hands for.
Okay, got it. So we welcome questions throughout. If possible, put them in the chat first before you raise your hand to jump in on the mic. I did want to just give a brief introduction, just to give you a lay of the land since our last workshop on October 1st, and also really since we submitted the advice letter back in August. So that was in Q3, and in Q3 we had about 1,000 circuits that we identified for reactivation out of around 4,000 circuits in our system, so about 1/4. Since in Q3 we reactivated 325 circuits, and then since the beginning of Q4 is not even over, we've reactivated an additional 378. That's 703 out of the 1,023 we identified in August. It's 69%. So I just want to lay that out there. I know stakeholders may have some other questions about other matters related to ICA, but I did want to identify that versus what we shared in August, we have remediated 69% of those circuits, and we now have around 300 left. And we can get in more detail on why those are left. We did set out a schedule out to Q3 2026. And so we still, based on our own schedule, we still have plenty of time remaining, but we are at least on schedule, if not ahead of schedule. And several of the criteria we identified have been fully remediated. And again, we can get into those details if you'd like, but I just wanted to share that because we're proud of our success. Our team's been working really hard on this. This is a top priority, and I think the numbers speak to our dedication to this issue. So with that, I guess I can pause to see if there are any questions, and that I will actually turn over to our regularly scheduled agenda. As you see, I will pause to see if there's any questions on the high-level review, and then I'm going to hand it over to Carly. Okay, Raymond, I'm not seeing anything immediately, so I will ask Carly to come on the mic, and we can go to the next slide, Angelica.
Alrighty, can you guys hear me okay? How's my audio? Good? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ari, for that introduction and for that overview. As previously mentioned, my name is Carly Gomez. I'm an engineer with SCE's ICA team, and today I'll be presenting on behalf of our. So I'm going to be breaking down some of those metrics that Ari mentioned and presenting the details of the progress that we've made before handing it off to my colleague Assad, who will be walking us through some of our Dr. Pep updates. So we can begin with our general ICA updates here, as you see on the screen. SCE has made great progress in the development of forecast load ICA capabilities. The completion of the milestones presented here will enable SCE to achieve the 5 refinements mandated per the September 2021 ALJ ruling. As mentioned in our last workshop, the long-term planning and system modeling tools ICA user interface design was completed. And since our last update, we have made significant progress in several additional milestones as well. The development of the second phase of the load flow engine and the as-planned circuit models is slated to be wrapped up by December 31st of this year, or as displayed here, the end of Q4 2025. These two milestones will provide us the capabilities to perform unbalanced load flow in the new long-term planning and system modeling tool, as well as capture all forward-looking components of the circuit models, which are referenced in the footnote of this slide. Additionally, the development of the long-term planning tool and system modeling tool user interface is on track for implementation in Q1 of 2026 next year as targeted. And we're on track to begin publishing forecast load ICA results to Dr. Pep in Q3 of next year. So this will mark the beginning of the forecast load ICA system-wide refresh in Q3 2026. You can go on to the next slide. In this section, I'll be providing some updates on SCE's uniform load ICA metrics. I know most of us are familiar with the two methodologies employed to aggregate these metrics, but I just wanted to revisit these definitions as it's been a while since we've walked through them, and in case there's anybody who's joining us today who is maybe a little bit more unfamiliar. So we use the two methodologies that are listed here to aggregate load ICA metrics. This is important to track results and understand how capacity availability is communicated in our results when we're publishing. The first methodology employed is the most limiting hour methodology. The results are aggregated via this method to be considered as a worst case scenario. So in a nutshell, the minimum capacity outcome is selected when using this methodology, or in other words, the most limiting hour, and this becomes the published ICA value for that segment. This is an extremely conservative view of circuit performance and doesn't quite capture circuit behavior over time because it reflects just the worst case hosting capacity availability at a single hour. So as stated in the Energy Council proposal appendix, this methodology can sometimes create a false perception of low capacity for additional load. And so to better capture holistic circuit performance, the node hour methodology was created and employed. In short, node hour methodology captures the behavior of all ICA active nodes on a circuit over time, and results are provided in a time series profile of hosting capacity availability at each node. In other words, this methodology provides insight into the maximum allowable capacities for all hours rather than capturing solely the worst performing hour like in the most limiting hour methodology. The node hour results are also published directly as downloadable files via Dr. Pep. As mentioned in our last workshop, SCE has refined its aggregation methodologies to include ICA active nodes only. And we can go on to the next slide. So since the last time we reported, SCE has increased ICA active nodes by 24.66% through successful remediation efforts. I'll discuss those efforts a little bit more detail during the ICA remediation update portion of this presentation. But as of Q4 of this year, SCE saw a 1.86% increase in zero capacity results when aggregating with the most limiting hour or worst case methodology, and a 0.73% increase in zero capacity results when aggregating with the node hour methodology. This minute increase in zero capacity results was expected as more circuits were reactivated, and this is not necessarily an indicator of worse results, quote, quote, worse results. We simply have more nodes in rotation now, and with more nodes come more instances of zero capacity. Overall, majority of SCE's results actually demonstrate 1,000 kilowatts or more of available capacity when referencing ICA. As you can see here in the node hour methodology, 87.86% of our active ICA nodes show that 1,000 kilowatts or higher of available capacity. So when looking at the system holistically, for all ICA active circuits, 87.86, nearly 90% of all circuits demonstrate 1,000 kilowatts or more of available capacity on the nodal level. So we can go to the next slide there.
Hey, Carly, this is Ari.
Yes.
We do have two questions in the chat, And let me take the simpler one first, which is from Anthony, I think from Cal Advocates, I believe.
Mhm.
A question from him that's related to my introduction. Can you confirm whether this new data incorporates the new 700 plus circuits that came online? I believe the answer is yes, but can you confirm if it
Yes,
includes
yeah.
those circuits I mentioned? Okay. And then we have a bit of a more complicated question about from Sky about most limiting hour methodology. I guess we can actually stay on this
Oh,
slide rather
I
than
have
go back.
a quick, sorry, all right, quick clarification there on that
Hmm.
question. So I think that I kind of want to revisit the reactivation versus publication thing that we have discussed before. So these results will include, chunks of those reactivated circuits. However, not all reactivated circuits have been reprocessed yet.
Oh,
So,
because there's a delay. What is it?
yeah,
Okay, got it.
yeah. So not exactly all 700, but there are a large portion of reactivated circuits are incorporated into these metrics.
And can you give stakeholders a sense of the queue length for those?
Um,
How long is it? Is it like 30 days? Is it we have a standard refresh or processing time, or not a standard, but a target processing time?
yeah, we shoot for 1 month,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
it's about 1 to 2 months.
Okay. Okay. So the updated circuits I mentioned started really back in August, but Q3. So of the 700, the vast majority are probably now in this data, but some are probably still queued for refresh. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone, and that'll continue as we reactivate additional circuits. There is a delay, but they will eventually make it into this. And by eventually, I mean on average around 30 days into the data set. Is that
Yeah.
relatively accurate,
Yeah, I
Carly?
think that the estimate is about 500 of those 700 circuits have been refreshed. So they're
Perfect.
incorporated in those metrics.
Perfect. Okay. Then we have a bit of a more complicated question from Sky. Are you able to see the chat? Because maybe you should read the question. And
Yeah,
we
give me a
may,
second.
this may be something that we circle up and address a little bit later in our presentation.
Yeah, let me see here. I'm just so
Carly,
as previously mentioned,
yeah,
to speak to this question a bit, and I think just verbally for the sake of the recording, because I'm not sure if questions will be published, but the question is pertaining to most limiting hour methodology being overly conservative, and if that's the case, then SCE should be required to publish a document that shows that we do not use most limiting hour when evaluating load energization applications. And we should be required to show how the node hour methodology relates to how we would review a load energization application. So as previously mentioned, both results are published to Dr. Pep, so they're both available. They're both in downloadable format. Customers can reference both methodologies for whichever circuit they're looking to interconnect to. So I think that the argument that it's misleading may be a little misguided because both results are available. So customers have visibility to all results. With concern to how we utilize the results in evaluating load energization applications, I think that that is something that we would have to take back to evaluate, or these requirements are something that we would have to defer to the commission to be able to decide how they would like us to proceed with communication on these methodologies and how they're implemented in the load energization application process.
Thanks for that, Carly. It looks like Sky has a follow-up with her hand up. So Sky, you should have a request to unmute.
Thanks. My comment is that, Carly, I understand that you guys published the results, but what you just explained and what Edison has continued to do for multiple years now is to publish the node hour methodology, which is not required or asked for by the commission. And when doing so, in your public comments, like you just did a second ago, you derive you state that you publish that because you don't think that the most limiting hour methodology provides the full picture or whatever it is the word you said. I think what is misleading to me about that is that you're conveying that that is not an accurate representation of how how relevant the data is to a load customer. And so if you believe that's the case, somebody should explain to me how you review load energization applications, because I know Edison's checked out on the the purpose of the ICA and load, but I think the reason people are looking at the map is to decide, is there capacity for my load application? And if you're saying you're not going to look at the most limiting hour, then you guys should explain that, and then explain how to use the ICA to derive a meaningful result if it's not the most limiting hour. My understanding is that the most limiting hour is used to review load interconnection applications, and that's why we asked the commission to report on it. But if Edison's going to repeatedly, for the last 4 years, say that you want to publish this, let's look at the other data that isn't how you, or how I understand you to review applications, then there should be not an oral explanation right now, a written explanation that says how somebody should look at the ICA results as it relates to how you actually would review their load application. Otherwise, you guys should stop doing it, because it just isn't helpful for customers if you keep saying, this data isn't relevant, but it is actually what is used. So if you think it's something else that you do in the load energization application, that's what customers care about. So why don't you publish something that is that, or explain why this, how you look at the ICA to get to what you actually would do in the load energization process.
Yeah, Michael from our team can go ahead and take on that question.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Michael Bergian, Senior Manager, Grid Policy here at SCE. Thanks for the question, Sky. So maybe a little bit of history of how we got to this node hour methodology. So previously, when we were publishing the most limiting hour methodology, we had situations where folks were concluding from that data that a certain percentage of our circuits could not host a single watt of additional load or additional generation. And we recognize that, as a reminder, the uniform load ICA is a product of multiple criteria. It's the thermal, the voltage, protection, et cetera. So it is very conservative, but in taking into account all of those criteria. So we developed this alternative node hour methodology to give a more accurate representation of, even if one node for 1 hour for one limiting criteria is 0, we should not be drawing the conclusion that that circuit in its entirety cannot host a single watt of additional load. That's just not true. And in addition to that, when we evaluate customer load energization requests, if in fact we conclude that, yes, there is, for example, a voltage issue for a couple of hours on that circuit, we're not going to reject that energization request. We're going to look at simple no-cost solutions like capacitor setting changes that we can implement very quickly to fully energize customer requests. If those measures are ineffective at meeting the customer's needs, we now have this product called Load Constraint Management System that will allow customers to get as much of the load capacity as possible on an hourly basis until we can implement longer lead time grid reconfiguration or upgrade that's necessary to fully serve the energization request. So in summary, we created this node hour methodology to try to avoid improper conclusions that our grid does not have capacity, when in fact it can, in many cases, host most, if not all, of our customer energization requests. Of course, it depends on how much they need, how quickly they need it, and what particular criteria is being violated. But we see that node hour methodology as a much better representation of the capacity on the grid today.
Thank you for that explanation, Michael. I didn't see Sky's hand go back up for a follow-up, but I did want to follow up on that question and build on Anthony's question about how, or rather Sky's request for a written explanation of that. Is all of that information that you just presented captured in the Dr. Pep user guide?
I don't have an answer to that question. I'm not sure if others on the team know if that's in the user guide. If not, we can certainly check and see if it's there.
Okay, then yeah, I do think it would be useful to understand the difference for stakeholders. We do have a question from Anthony as well, or maybe a comment. Anthony, do you want to raise your hand, or was your question satisfied? Anthony, you should have a request to unmute.
Thank you. I mean, I think Michael here touched a little bit on the question. It was more so corroboration of some of the things that Ira was saying, but from at least your follow-up as well, and as far as I know, customers aren't necessarily aware that they can refer to a node hour in that way and just assume if there's 1 hour of limiting criteria of like zero capacity or other, that just, you know, that's good enough for them to base any decision off of and just have confidence with an application going through. I would appreciate if maybe SCE can explain slightly more. Is this in relation to what, for example, what we've seen in the staff proposal, that for a lot of the voltage criteria, usually it's a simple settings change. So can you give a little bit more context as to in what instances can a customer like safely use a node hour methodology and look at it and consider the limiting criteria as well and what that is, and just say, oh, I'm sure I'll be able to apply for energization requests here, and it's very likely that it's gonna be fine and it's not gonna be a costly upgrade and I'm gonna be able to go through. Is there any conditions that are easy for a customer to know about that allow them to use node hour in that way? Otherwise, why can't we input that into the most limiting hour, either in some sort of notice or something like that, that just tells the customer, hey, even if it's zero here, you're most likely going to be fine. I mean, ideally, I'd like it to reflect more of like an actual hosting capacity, but I understand it might be more complicated than that at times. But I do think right now, I don't really think a customer can be confident looking at a node hour and making that, you know, that deduction, especially that as you know, Raymond also brought it up, it's not currently really laid out for a customer how to rely on a node hour as opposed to most limiting hour.
Yeah, thanks for that, the question and comment. So I think the answer in my mind is pretty simple. Customers should not be concerned with either the most limiting hour methodology or the node hour methodology. What we see on the screen here are two different statistical approaches to bin the ICA results to give folks a sense of how is capacity distributed, how is available load capacity in this case distributed across SCE's distribution system. So this is taking all of the billions or trillions of results that we produce and putting them into buckets so we can understand, hey, you know what, how much capacity is there actually on SCE's grid for additional load? So customers should not be concerned with this at all. This is more of like an auditing tool for us to understand how our capacity is changing over time and how our improvements in ICA are driving additional capacity. The use case for customers that are seeking energization to our system should be to start with the location where they're trying to connect to our grid, and then downloading the time series uniform load ICA results and examining if their specific operational profile is in alignment with the capacity on an hourly basis or not. For example, if a certain location has zero capacity at 3 in the morning, but a customer is seeking energization and they won't even have, you know, they won't even have their processes online and consuming load at 3 in the morning, then that will be a very viable location for them to interconnect to. Of course, all of this is after we implement all of the load ICA refinements and do the system-wide refresh in Q3 2023, when we're actually bringing in the actual data from our planning systems. But that's a very good example of where we could see a zero, but it's completely irrelevant to what a customer is trying to energize at that location. So, you know, in summary, the customer should start with the location where they're trying to energize. They should download the full set of load ICA results if the uniform load ICA results are fully supportive of what they're trying to do, then they don't really need to look further. If there are some zeros in the uniform load ICA result, they could look at the individual criteria that drove those zeros and then maybe get a sense of, hey, this is a voltage issue. Maybe that's more likely to be a lower cost or faster mitigation measure than something like a thermal overload. Hope that helps.
All right, looks like we have another hand up from Sky. And Sam, I see you have a comment. If you want to voice that after Sky's question, you can raise your hand as well. Sky, you should have a request unmute.
Thanks. So two questions. Or first, Michael, I agree with you that that these are aggregate statistics and that customers aren't, like when they're looking about a specific project, they're not looking at these aggregate statistics. But the reason why I am finding it hard to understand why you guys keep saying these statistics are not relevant, or specifically the most limiting hour, is that when a customer comes to look at a specific node, what they are interested in is their capacity at that point. Now, so I agree that these are aggregate statistics, but to say that what the customers are looking for and the aggregate statistics should be different doesn't make sense to me. But that leads me to my more substantive question, which is, you just basically said that Edison is doing flexible interconnection, I believe, for all load energization applications. If I understood it correctly, I'm going to rephrase so I can make sure I understand what you're saying. If I am looking at a node that has constraints at 3 a.m., for example, and I don't intend to operate at 3 a.m., tell me how that interconnection application load application review goes. Are you saying that you'll just accept that as a normalized practice, Edison is going to say, oh, you're probably not using energy at 3 a.m., so we're just going to allow you to connect? Or like, is it a little bit more complicated than that?
Yeah, I would say it's similar, but a little bit more complicated than that. And thanks for the question, Sky. So what we would ask for customers seeking energization is, what is your load profile? What are your expected operations on an hourly basis? And then we take that profile and we compare it to the circuit's load hosting capacity to determine if there's going to be an issue or not. I'll need to follow up with the team to confirm exactly how it happens. But if there is a situation where the customer's operations and the capacity on the grid are conducive to a flexible service connection, we will offer that to the customer as a way to expedite their energization, with the agreement that they would not exceed certain capacity thresholds during certain hours of the year until such time that we complete the necessary upgrades to allow their full energization request to be fulfilled. I'm a little less certain on, if we trust their load profile 100% and don't impose the limit, versus if we assume that that at any time they could change their operations and potentially expose a criteria violation, and we would then ask them to abide by a consumption profile through load control management system. So we can follow up on that detail.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying, Michael, and please do follow up with more detail, is that the limiting hour is highly relevant, because it's going to be the thing that determines whether or not you do trust the load profile. And you have to look at the load profile and determine whether it is distinct. For example, a lot of customers can't say with certainty, will I be charging or using energy at 3 a.m. or not? Or maybe I have a 24-hour profile, in which case the most limiting hour would be relevant, correct?
So for customers that are seeking energization on our system, we will either ask them for a load schedule and load profile, or we will assume one based on the sector and the total capacity request based on our load profile library. And we will use that to understand their hourly impact on the grid. Certainly, if that analysis through the energization evaluation determines that there is a criteria violation, we will look to low, no cost, quick mitigation measures that can be put in place so that we can fully serve the customer's energization requests. For the event that the solution is not quick or is costly, is a long lead time solution, we would then explore offering the LCMS solution to the customer.
Okay, so no, this is not a question, but my IREC's understanding is the most limiting hour methodology is still highly relevant based on Michael's explanation. I still don't understand how the node hour methodology would be used by a customer. So that's why we think that the aggregate statistics that are relevant for the Commission's consideration about whether or not the ICA is accurate and useful continues to be the most limiting hour methodology.
Yeah, so maybe just a brief response to that, Sky, is again, these two methods are aggregated statistics to give us a sense of how capacity is distributed across our system. The values that are seen here don't play a role in the energization requests. They're simply a tool for us in these meetings and as we are implementing refinements to Load ICA. We are certainly open to any other ideas for how to visualize this very rich and detailed data set in a way that is simple, informative, and actionable to customers. Right now, we use that most limiting value to symbolize the line segments on the map. Maybe there are different ways that could be done, and that's also one of the reasons why we expose all the downloadable data so that customers can download that and create their own visualization as they see fit. Maybe they want to look at the average capacity on an hourly basis. Maybe they want to look at the capacity without protection considerations or what have you. By exposing all the downloadable data, customers have the freedom to get this information and symbolize or visualize it however they may see fit.
All right, thank you for those answers, Michael. And it looks like we have a hand up from Sam. Sam, you should have a request to unmute.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate the back and forth here. I want to step back just a moment and say, the data here is very good to have. This has come a long way over a number of years, and this data is really useful data. And I want to acknowledge and appreciate that. It's a great improvement over time. That said, what we're talking about here is helping the customer understand how to use the data. And what Michael just described a minute ago is, I think, exactly what needs to be in the handbook or in the web page or clearly easily present with the data is how to use it, what it actually means. Because those of us who've been involved with this for many years understand now that we have the limiting criteria, what that is, that's great, and we can look up or how easy, how expensive that would be to mitigate, and you can't put those mitigations into the results ahead of time. But for anyone who hasn't been as deeply involved with it for so long, it's not as clear. And so just having something up front, I hate to say we should color code this, but in a sense it is. Like there are certain mitigations which are, which are easy or inexpensive, and there are others which are, much more challenging. And you can't know precisely, but you can get a pretty good idea because you have as much data as we have here, including what the particular constraint is, and ideally what the next constraint is, for the limiting factor. So just to make sure, from any page, like, what do I do with this data? Like, how limiting is this is sort of the question people want to know. The ability to use flexible interconnection or flexible load is fabulous. It's great that we've moved forward with that. That sort of thing is just the refinement in communication that would make the really good data we're getting that much more useful and practical for someone seeking interconnection. The aggregate data is great from more of a policy standpoint to be able to say, like, okay, this is what the grid has in general. That's good. Mapping it out and seeing where that capacity is also really useful. But for the individual, seeking use of this data, they're usually looking at one particular location, one node on one circuit, or trying to compare a few. That's not where the aggregate data is. That's where, what does the result mean for whether this, how much of a limitation it is. And that's, I think there can be a better job of communication for that, building upon the great data we have at this point.
Thank you for that, Salman. And I do agree. This is useful data, and this is a great explanation we just heard. And I think this would be the type of thing that could be added to the user guide and would provide a lot of value there. Just having that documentation ready for users so that they have a better idea of what they're looking at.
Yeah,
But
it's good.
thank you
Good
for
on
that,
the
Salman.
user guide. It's also good on the sort of the results, just like a, even a, I don't know if it's a pop-up or a note or something else, referring people to how to understand and interpret that data.
And if I may just jump in, again, this is Ari from SE. Thanks for this question, Sam. The connection with flexible service, the connection between ICA and flexible service connections is an important one, and it's one that we're building. So yeah, as Raymond mentioned, the flexible service connections are really being handled mainly in a different rulemaking, but we do have crossover. In fact, I'm handling that as well for SCE. It may be different for other IUs. I should make that clear. So it is a different proceeding, but we are hearing that in that proceeding that, hey, how can ICA be of use? And we are examining how to bring these things together. So flexible service connection being relatively new for all of us, we're trying to find ways to best support it. So I appreciate your question. I really also appreciate your positivity and understanding that we're working on it and that we can continue to make improvements and make connections between different use cases. So thank you for that feedback, and we will continue to try to improve that.
Thanks. It's been a long time. I think in summary, it might just be to, to have a note or a link referring to mitigation options for limiting capacity. And then that can simply link to something, in the guidebook or elsewhere that says, if it looks like you don't have enough capacity, here are the, here are the more or less limiting or expensive options to resolve that or to mitigate that.
And I thank you. I think that's good advice, and it's actually something we've been considering. Again, these are kind of two different proceedings and really two different groups that work on this, but I've raised this, and I really do appreciate your feedback. It reminds us that it's requested by stakeholders. The concept that we would put some information up on the portal about the options. It would not give you all of the options. You would still have to inquire. I want to make that clear. We can't automate that yet. That's a long way off. But having that indication on the portal of, we have these additional programs or programs that you may qualify for. Here's how to learn more. I think we could do that as a first step. Automating that process, long way off. A long way
Oh,
off.
yes,
But
I'm not saying automating that, putting that in the results, but simply, a list of, if there are low results, flexible interconnection may be one mitigation. The types of changes you would need to make for it, may be fairly, as it was described. Some of those are easy to increase capacity, depending on what the limiting factor is. Some are more expensive. That's just a static list that sort of, refers people like, okay, if it's this limiting factor, that's probably a bigger deal. If it's this other limiting factor, it's not such a big deal. Let's go ahead and explore. Let's talk to SE engineers. It's worth pursuing. Just that simple static piece of information to provide context.
these are great ideas. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sam. Really appreciate it. We will try to implement that. I'll work with the team to get that moving. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Not a new algorithm.
I'm not seeing any more questions, so I think Carly, if you're still presenting, I can hand it back to you to continue.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Raymond. So a lot of talk about the numbers, a lot of talk about the metrics, and here they are. They've been on the screen for a little bit now. So I hope that folks have gotten a chance to digest those. But these are our results for this quarter. In this chart, you'll see that we included the count of results or nodal results that fell into each uniform load ICA range. We have that chalked up to a percentage out of the total of 100%. So you'll see how many results in each range make up that total 100%. And then you'll see a delta from the Q3 percentage that we presented last time that we met. So the negative percentage in the delta from the Q3 percentage column will denote a decrease, and a positive percentage will denote an increase. As we can see here, the results have been consistent and maintained, even with the reactivation of hundreds of incredibly complex circuits. So this, we feel, provides some evidence that the fixes that we've been implementing over the past year have been exceptionally effective. We've maintained good results and continue to be consistent in our progress. So I hope that these numbers here are provide some evidence of that. We can go to the next slide. And here we just want to provide a visual representation of those numbers from over the past year. Here we have trends from, can you guys hear me still? I notice it's buffering. Okay. So here we have some trends from Q1 through Q4 of 2025. And you can see how significantly the zero capacity results have dropped and how progress has been consistent across all other load ICA capacity ranges. And especially visually here, we can see how that 87% of all ICA active nodes have that capacity of 1,000 kilowatts of available or higher. So these are really promising results considering we're now at 92% of all of all SCE circuits being ICA active. And that, speaking of reactivation and active circuits, that will lead us into our next section where we'll cover some of the ICA remediation updates. And we can go ahead and go to the next slide.
All right, looks like we have another hand up from Sky real quick. If that's okay. Sky, you should have an unmute request.
Yeah, can you go back to the previous slide, please? Thank you. So, Carly, I'm not sure if you said this and I missed it, but this is the node hour methodology, not the most limiting hour methodology, correct?
Is the question in the chat or?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Carly, are you able to hear us or Sky in particular?
Oh, no, I can't hear. Oh, sorry. I think I've lost audio. So my apologies.
Okay.
Yeah, I can jump in. Yes, the bar chart here is showing the node hour methodology.
Okay. Do you guys have a bar chart that shows the most limiting hour methodology?
We didn't create one for this presentation, but all the data that could be used is on the prior slide. And then I think we can grab those stats from the prior quarterly workshops to construct a similar bar chart.
In the future, it would be helpful if you did it for both.
Sky, is that the conclusion of your question?
Yes, I mean, it goes with my previous, I think the previous slide is basically not telling us anything useful for customers or for the aggregate assessment of whether the ICA is accurate. So I find it bothersome to have data that's misleading provided to the public. So that's my point, but I was hoping that they would have just done it for both at least.
Okay, thank you for raising that point.
Hey, Raymond, I'm wondering if Carly may have lost. Let me see. I appreciate Sky's question, and we can include a graph like that in the next presentation. Because I'm not sure if Carly is able to use her audio.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Did you switch to your
Okay.
laptop?
Yeah, I had to, I don't know what's up with my headset, but
Sure, no, that
I
happens
can hear
to
you
me
now.
sometimes too. Okay, we're just moving on now, Carly, to the ICA remediation update. So I think, again, Angelica's driving the slides, but I think we can go into the next slide, right, Carly?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
All right, so since our last update that we provided October 1st, we've reactivated 378 circuits. A breakdown of the criteria from which the circuits were reactivated is provided here. In the table on the right, you'll notice that we now have a total of 3,777 circuits ICA active, with only 311 remaining inactive. The total number of active circuits increased by a net count of 375 circuits, as 3 circuits that were completely unrelated to inactive or active criteria were decommissioned, which brought the total circuit count to 4,088. You'll see the difference between the total circuit count in Q3 versus Q4 there. So to avoid any confusion here, yes, there was a total of 378 circuits reactivated. However, we only saw the net increase of 375 circuits to the active circuit count due to the 3 unrelated circuits that dropped out of the SCE system. If there are any questions here, I can go ahead and take a pause. And if not, then we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So we're very happy to relay that since we last met, we've completely remediated 2 categories of inactive criteria, which are criteria 4 and 5 listed here. We've cleared primary meter customer constraints and technical limitation constraints from all circuits affected by these criteria only. So those buckets are now empty, and circuits with these 2 criteria, and only these 2 criteria, have been reactivated ahead of the proposed schedule that was included in Advice 5614E, which was filed in August of this year. So we now only have 3 criteria remaining. There were some additional dependencies on the child sub and pole tops that have constrained us a bit, but we will be able to reactivate the remaining 70 circuits meeting criteria 1 and 2 very soon. And we are still on track to reactivate loop child subs by Q3 of next year, on track with the proposed timeline that was provided earlier this year. So with that, if there are no questions pertaining to the inactive criteria or remaining inactive circuits, I'll go ahead and leave some room for questions.
There is one question in the chat. It looked like someone was typing a response, then might have hit enter too quickly. But Ben Schwartz asked, what does it mean that 3 circuits dropped off the SCE system?
Yeah. So this just means circuits were decommissioned, so they're no longer in service, or they're otherwise, sometimes there's circuits that have been cut over, so they're kind of interconnected into a larger circuit or something like that. They're no longer a part of the system as their own circuit. So that's all that means. Typically out of service circuits.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. So if there are no additional questions, I can go ahead and hand it off to Assad now for Dr. Pep updates.
Hello, everyone. My name is Assad Bucks. I'm the business product lead for Dr. Pep. And today's agenda will be discussing new features, upcoming features, and recent bugs and fixes for Dr. Pep. Next slide, please. Several of the new features that are coming to Dr. Pep. The first one being ICA sublayers. In the new update to Dr. Pep, you should now see 10 new sublayers in the ICA layers list. All these layers will offer more ways for users to see the gen studies separately, meeting the requirements for 3.27.1 and gives more visibility on ease of use to see each of the sublayers, sub-studies. Next, please. One of the biggest updates we're doing for Dr. Pep for this release is changes to the ICA widget. Moving forward, you will be now able to see on this ICA second segment display the most limiting factors, criteria violations, and pop-up boxes for each of the study categories. And the pop-ups will give brief, and we have a tooltip to give a brief description of the potential most limiting criteria. Next slide.
Actually, I saw there appears to be a hand up from
Uh,
Sky. It might be on the slide.
Go ahead,
Sky
Sky.
would be a unmute request. There we go.
Yeah, thanks. Can you first go back to the previous slide? I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Can you explain again what so in order to, do I understand that in order, so the layer list, if I want like the generation steady state voltage results, for example, if I click on this layer that it colors the lines only, or does it change? So the only way to, I'm still processing here, is the only way to see the results for all the limiting criteria to look at them individually by clicking each of the layers, or can I see on the pop-up box all of the limiting criteria and their limitations, meaning their individual values?
I believe the best way, you'll have to click on the pop-up box. Click on each one, and you have to click through each one to see it on that specific node.
Did you guys work with the commission staff on developing this method?
We did it based off of the requirements and with our internal stakeholders on developing
Who are the internal stakeholders?
within SC.
Okay, so you didn't talk with customers or the staff about whether this achieves the intent of the order? And I don't want to, I'm not playing fish here. Let me explain. This seems really difficult if you're a customer, right? If I'm understanding correctly, that you're telling me that instead of having a pop-up box that show me all of the limiting criteria and their values, that I'm going to manually need to select each of those different things and pull up a different pop-up box in order to get that value? Or am I misunderstanding what you're showing here?
So let's give me one moment.
Maybe I can jump in while you're
Mhm.
looking into that, Assad. I believe the change that was made here is we still maintain the layer that includes all of the limiting criteria in a single layer, but this expansion of layers, if you will, allows folks to understand based on a certain criteria what the ICA results would be, and to symbolize the features on the map based on that limiting criteria, rather than the aggregation of multiple limiting criteria, which more often than not is going to show a lot more red or lower values than the individual criteria by themselves.
Well, so I think I get, that's where I was starting, is I think I get the value of being able to color the lines based upon the different criteria. And that seems cool. And but what I'm concerned about is that, and was my question, is I also think people are just, the intent of the order was that you were going to be able to click on a pop-up box and see all of the values for the limiting criteria. And that's the part that I'm asking, is the only way to see the limiting values to select all the different layers and manually click through them, or?
Okay, I misspoke earlier. So we still have the current layer at the ICA segment layer that still has all those values listed. So you should be still able to see it.
I didn't know you had a layer that showed all the values, so help me out.
So that'll be, if you go back one slide, It's called the ICA segment layer. It will display the integrated capacity. It'll show all the
But
values
this
in
isn't
one page.
showing, when you say it says showing all the values, it does not, this box, if I understand it correctly, is not showing me what the value is for voltage, thermal, protection, up flex. It's showing me the most limiting criteria value. And I think if I remember correctly, the purpose of the order was to say that somebody else should be able to hit the pop-up box and see the individual values for the limiting criteria. Are you saying that's shown elsewhere on this
let me
pop-up
jump in
box?
here, Sky.
Yeah.
We're referring to OP29 in the decision, the 24-10-030. OP29 does not require that we indicate the actual numbers. All we need to do is identify which is the limiting criteria. So this is in keeping with the requirement, and this was actually just rolled out a few days ago. So this was due December 15th. And we are to incorporate more detail of limiting criteria, and that is what we did here. So specifically, no later than December 15th, 2025, utilities shall provide the information contained in Table 15 of the decision in the ICA user guide. So that's what we did here. This was in coordination with ED, the other IOUs. We all understood this to mean that we would have a pop-up showing which of the criteria is limiting, not what the figure is for that limiting criteria. So this may be a matter of interpretation, but this is how we interpreted it, and we did work closely with ED on implementing the OP29 requirement. So this is brand new. If you do have concerns about it, well, we need to talk to ED about it and interpret the decision. But this was months in the making with ED and the other IUs, and this is what we all came to an understanding of.
Okay, so talking to ED now. Can you please explain to us your thinking behind what value this added and why you didn't consider publishing all of the results? So I'm going to use a concrete example to illustrate why this seems not worth the squeeze, so to speak. If the most limiting value is operational flexibility, for example, or is thermal or whatever it is, and there's one close behind it, I don't see why it's like all the work and the 2 years it took to do this really is telling a customer anything worth that effort, as opposed to just telling them what all of the limiting values are. Like, that's not, they have the data. Why are we just saying you're just going to tell them that the most limit criteria is, and this box is weird because it just says generation protection, I guess, as opposed to telling them, here's what the thermal value is, here's what the voltage value is, here's what the protection value is. Like, is this really what you think the commission was trying to do? Raymond?
So this should be the questions directed to me, Sky.
I think you're the energy division, right?
Yes, I am. I mean, and I cannot speak for the complete interpretation from the commission, but I can speak to some of the work here. The order does require more information on the limiting criteria, and for the utility to provide information on what the limiting criteria is. I believe the intent here is largely from SE to present what criteria is the issue in the pop-up as a snapshot. And that goes back to what Sam was discussing earlier. And, I think Sam has an additional comment on that there maybe is improvements that could be done with communication. But the intent, from what I recall, was to help users understand very quickly which criteria was being triggered. And there probably should be a little bit better explanation of the mitigations that can go around solving those different criteria. And I believe that was actually included in the staff proposal, having more information on that. And it was decided by the commission, by the commissioners, as they voted on it, that that it was hard for the utilities to present
Mitigations
that
are hard.
information.
Right now, all the ICA does is tell you what the limitations are. It's not telling you what the mitigations are. I actually agree with the utilities that that's a complicated thing. But what I thought was, I guess I just had misunderstood the commission's intent. And we spent 2 years to tell somebody some very basic information. So, okay, thanks.
Okay. So may I ask you directly, I guess, would it be more useful if you saw just the most limiting value for each criteria? Would that be what your
Yeah, I
your
thought
hope
that
is?
was what we were trying to do, was say on the pop-up box, you would say, so rather than just showing 0, it would say generation protection 2, thermal 1.6. You know, like that's what I thought was happening. And again, all that data exists. It's not I'm sure it's complicated to do because everything with ICA is complicated, but again, like, so because it just doesn't really tell you that much to tell you what the single limiting factor is. If the generation protection limitation is 5, for example, and the thermal protection is 4.9, you have to go to the downloadable data to understand anything. And so and since those values are available, it just seemed like if all of this effort was to help people to see it more transparently instead of having to do the complicated download and sort through all the hours and filter the tables, which are really, really hard to do. But you know, that's all that's been done, I guess. So I feel like there's still like a really deep miss on, did anybody talk to the customers about this? Did anybody try to think through what people are actually trying to do with the ICA?
Mm-hmm. And thank you for those comments, Guy. You know, this improvement was just rolled out, but I do think that's meaningful feedback that we're getting from right now. This improvement is 2 days old now, but certainly I would like to meet the utilities and discuss the feasibility of incorporating that, because I do hear the value in what you're saying.
Yeah, and maybe what we should do going forward, since we've been sitting in these workshops, which are not very productive so far, is have the utilities talk to customers before they do a rollout so they can understand their internal stakeholders are not the ones that are using the map. It is interconnection customers, load and generation, that are using the map, and think through what actually people need. There's a huge problematic disconnect between, just like we've talked about already, with the aggregate results of like what customers are trying to understand and what we want to convey to them about the usefulness of the ICA. I think this data is available in the downloads. It's not the end of the world. Like, somebody can, once they get a PhD in the ICA and understand how to sort those spreadsheets, they can figure it out. But the point of the order, I thought, was to make it easier for customers. And I feel like this was a little bit of a miss in terms of actually really improving the customer experience.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, just another comment from my side. So I hear you, Raymond. You've asked the utilities to kind of look into what it would take to address the feedback we're hearing today. In order to do that, I want to make sure I have a clear understanding of what exactly we envision to be added here. And for me, where I struggle is there's so much information in the downloadable data, and how much of that data do we want to bring into the pop-up, to bring into the symbology of the maps in a way that's most effective. And what I think I heard was, for each of the limiting criteria within each of the ICA studies, load and generation, we want to see in a pop-up what the lowest value is for each of those limiting criteria. But then I heard feedback from other folks potentially that we want to know how close the next limiting value is. So to me, if you have zeros in all of those boxes, but those zeros only occur for like 1 or 2, 5 hours out of the full data set, then we effectively have not provided any more meaningful data by adding the enhancement that I just heard described. And at some point, I mean, this is energization and DER interconnection to our system is a complex process. We think ICA and Dr. Pepper tools that we can try to help make as easy or straightforward as possible, and at least filtering that and providing meaningful, actionable information to customers. But at some point, we got to jump into the downloadable data. That's why it's there.
Thank you for that feedback, Michael. And I think Sam has another comment on that, saying feedback from both external and internal users is essential for rolling out a user-friendly product. And I think that is true, and it is difficult to prioritize which information is presented. But I would encourage all the IOUs to reach out. I don't know what communications you do have with direct users, but I would encourage perhaps reaching out at times just to check if that is what you're looking for. And I think that would be helpful for everyone. But thank you. I don't see any other questions at the moment. Assad, I think you are okay to present again.
Okay. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. The next major update for...
Sorry, I think there was a hand up by someone, Bill from PG&E.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, can you guys hear me? I was,
yes,
it was just on the prior topic, just regarding the stakeholder thing, just kind of weighing in. We have not yet received any customer requests for that kind of pop-up information. Of course, this is all new, but we haven't actually had any direct customer requests for that. So just kind of reiterating what Edison was saying, like, let's, I think our view is, let's see if this actually, sometimes more information can be more confusing, and but we understand, we hear the points about that if customers actually do want that, we want to be responsive to that. But just in terms of customer feedback, we have not yet actually received any requests for that to be on the pop-up.
Thank you for that clarification, Bill. I mean, I will say I always encourage proactive outreach, but I do understand. I do hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so next major update for Dr. Pep is regarding the load profile graph. We have updated the labels to show month and hour in the legend to be more clear on what the data is being displayed in the correlation between the month and the numerical value, which is the hour for that month. Next slide.
Sorry, so it looks like we do have raised hands once again. Go to Sam first.
Go ahead.
Sam, you should have a request to unmute.
There we go. Thanks. This is just a quick response on PG&E's feedback there. It really seems a bit disingenuous from the workshops, with customers, with users over the last number of years. This has come up, and as Sky was saying, she thought this was what was intended from the order as it came through before. To say that you haven't gotten requests from customers using the thing, it's like, who even, how do customers even know that that is what they should do to request information which is not showing in a pop-up? I thought that's what these workshops were precisely for, and why we've had workshops and meetings and stakeholder meetings over this for many years now. So looking to see, without asking customers outside of the workshops, to see if you have randomly gotten a request to add something to your data set, does not seem like a good basis for evaluating actual customer needs or requests. You do need to be more proactive than that, and I think customers have been very proactive through the many years of commission proceedings we've had on this. Just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And Sky appears to have another question as well. Should have a request on.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to make sure I understand what this chart is showing. So when it says April 00 at the first line, can you tell me, just to help me understand what that means? Is that, or APR, I assume that meant April. You said it added month and hour, and I'm confused. So talk me through how I read this and what it means. I'm looking at the bottom axis.
Mhm.
What are the numbers that follow the month? Is that a day in the month or
That's a specific hour in the month. So
specific hour in the month?
that has a min load and a max load for that particular month.
Okay. And is there a reason why is the number at the bottom? So like, why are there, so there's 3 for April, hour 0, hour 10, and hour 20. But for May, it's hour 6, hour 16, and there's only 2 for May. Again, I don't need to split hairs. I just want to make sure. I have a very hard time when I look at these understanding what the values are that it's telling me. I usually end up having to download the spreadsheet instead. So
So
if somebody's looking at this axis, why is it that like it's the 6th hour in May that's shown on the axis? Is that because it's the most limiting, or talk me through it?
So just to give some background, in the downloadable file, there's that each month will have 24 hours. So in this context, we're seeing that hour that's either the maximum load for that particular day for that given second. And due to how the graph is shrinked for the sake of this image, it looks, if you were to expand it on Dr. Pepper itself, you can see the granularity of the data. And the larger the box goes, the more hours can be shown. And I'll defer to one of my colleagues, Belinda.
Hi, good morning. Just making sure if you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, so when we created this, this is just a tool limitation where it won't show you the full 24 hours. Essentially, the full x-axis will look like with a 288 hours, 24 hours for each of the 12 months. It is randomly chosen, unfortunately. The hours you'll see, the bigger you expand the screen, you will see different hours.
Okay.
So, like you
Okay.
said, Sky, the
Yeah,
best way is
that
through the
explains it. I
downloadable
just wanted to make
file.
sure I understood the best I could what those numbers meant.
Sure.
So, okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Next slide, please. The next slide is just an update to the Dr. Pep user guide. We're in session table 15, providing more information regarding limiting criteria and a description of most limiting factor to help end users understand it more. If there's no questions, we can go to the next slide. The next feature in Dr. Pep is based off of FEC Order 2023. The intention of this new feature is to allow users to understand generation hosting capacity at the substation level within SE service territory. And the new functionality allows end user stakeholders to enter the megawatts that they are trying to interconnect with and see on the inactive widget where within the service territory or in a particular area within our service territory where there be available hosting capacity. And this is based off of Q cluster studies. If no questions, we can go to the next slide. The next enhancement.
There's a hand up.
Go ahead.
All right, is there a hand up?
I saw Sky's hand going up. Oh, she just
Sorry,
typed in.
I realized I should wait till he's done. I want to go back to an earlier topic, but let Assad finish this part. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item. Sorry, could you go back? I think I didn't discuss that one. So next item for new features is the transmission constraint flag. This is going to be on the available load capacity layer. It's a text flag that we're adding for all the circuits to show if there's specific transmission constraints on the circuit that may impact the ability to do interconnections. And it'll be a yes/no flag. In this scenario, there's no known constraints for this particular circuit. Next slide. Upcoming features for Dr. Pep. We are targeting the introduction of forecast load ICA by September 30th of 2026. And for the ALC layer, we're anticipating the introduction of sub-transmission line capacity by October 31st. And lastly, we're looking at miscellaneous improvements to Dr. Pep to meet the requirements on 3.27.1 Table 16 regarding ICA map pop-ups and API CSV variable names for consistency. Next slide. Recent bug fixes for Dr. Pep. On September 24th, as previously mentioned, we had an issue where several distribution circuits were missing from Dr. Pep due to a technical issue. The issue has been resolved and the missing distributions have been restored to Dr. Pep as of October 17th. On October 3rd, we had to take down the DDoR layer due to a data quality issue. The data quality was fixed and the layer was republished on October 23rd. That's it. Thank you.
It looks like we have the comment from Sky saying it would be helpful if the CPU staff could pull up table 15. And yet Carly did point out that it is contained on slide, I think it's 31 of the combined deck, perhaps. Yeah, so that is, there you go, Sky. So do you have a question related to this?
Yeah, so I just wanted to, and this was really for you, Raymond. I just wanted you to talk me through what you concluded from this text and the table. So the text which I quoted in the chat is from the ordering paragraph, and it says that they should incorporate more detail of limiting criteria. And then it references that the utility shall provide the information contained in table 15 of this decision. So table 15 with the eye chart here, but looks to me like it's showing all of the limiting criteria for generation and load and requesting the max value for each of them. Is that not how you interpreted it?
My personal interpretation of this is that the X indicates which ICA type those fields are applicable to, and they are supposed to provide a snapshot of which is the most limiting criteria, as in which ICA study criteria was the most hampered.
So the information contained in table 15, you're saying was intended to just be which one was the most limiting, not actually the information in the table.
Correct.
Okay, it's an interesting interpretation, but thank you very much.
All right. Well, we are in the SCE Q&A portion. We're still ahead of schedule. Are there any other questions? If not, we will have a slightly early break before getting to PG&E.
We have a couple of hands up, Raymond.
Looks like Sky again. Yes, Sky. Request to unmute.
I saw Sam's and someone else. Sorry, because
I don't
think
have a
I can...
question. I'm done.
great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Sam and then Anthony after. Sam, thank you.
Yes,
You are unmuted.
thank you. Thank you. Sky is the actual attorney here. I occasionally get accused of it, but I think reading this is important. I'm really glad she posted that up. It does not say the most limiting criteria. It says the limiting criteria, which I would read to mean all of the limiting criteria, rather than just the most limiting criteria. Again, I'm not sure this is the place for legal interpretation or that we need to argue it. It seems like what is obviously useful, but it also seems like an actual legal reading of the term would support what we've been asking for and what Sky said was expected. So just again, a comment on that from a non-attorney.
Thank you. And we do have a legal team at the CPUC that I can raise this question to.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if maybe we could back up a couple slides. I just want to make sure folks saw the slide on the most limiting factors, this one here, where in this table, you can hover over the information icon and it shows you what the most limiting criteria that's driving the number in the table.
Yes, that's really useful to have. And again, the engineering behind this in the model and the engineers on the web interface are doing a great job. It's in the communication as to what's there, because the most limiting criteria is obviously very relevant, but the limiting criteria beyond just the most limiting criteria is also highly relevant, and that's what we're trying to get to, so that we know, like, if we address the most limiting criteria, then what becomes relevant are the other limiting criteria, which are also limiting criteria. So this pop-up is great, but that other, where Sky was suggesting on the table, the pop-up table there just lists each of the four or 3 to 6 different limiting criteria with the values there. The data is all there. It's been great to model that. Being able to see it without going through too many steps and hoops or analysis is the what we're looking for, since the data is already available.
So
let me try.
I can see if I understand. So are you you're looking for each of the, we'll call them studies within ICA, thermal, steady state voltage, voltage variation, protection, operational flexibility, et cetera. You would like this pop-up to show for each of those criteria, what is the lowest value across the 576 for the node that you clicked on? Is that correct?
That sounds right. I don't want to take that too precisely, and we'd refer back to
Sure.
users in terms of presentation. I don't have a problem with this particular piece here. And again, I think there's been a lot of great work done in improving and refining both the data and the access over time. But being able to click on a node, have a pop-up, and it was from an earlier screen, I think, that a separate screen where the other table is provided, that gives you the information at the place you've clicked it. You don't just want to see the list of what the most limiting criteria are. You want to see the simple number that is result for each of the criteria, which may be limiting, because if you mitigate one, then it's the next one which is relevant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to respond. I thank you for this feedback. Again, this was just rolled out a couple of days ago. I also believe that PG&E, who's going to be presenting next, also rolled it out on December 15th, I believe. I hope they'll be presenting on that. This could be a matter of interpretation. I understand the difference between limiting and most limiting criteria. Criteria is plural, so as a starting point, it could be more than one limiting criteria in the decision. So let's since they're presenting next, I think they'll have something about this. If not, we will take it on ourselves to connect with PG&E, ask how they interpreted it, then we'll go back to ED. This may have been a simple misinterpretation of the decision, or maybe it was a proper interpretation. We'll have to work on that with ED and other the other IUs. I also want to mention SDG&E does have an extension on this for 4 weeks, so they have not implemented this, but we will include them in the conversation as well. So if it is decided it was limiting criteria, not most limiting criteria, they're aware of that as well. So I really do appreciate this is very fresh. And this is why, we appreciate these workshops and the stakeholder input. And we will circle back on this. And I also wanted to mention there is a biannual report coming up at the end of January, where you will also be able to get more information on our progress. And this might be something that we can add there if we do need to make a change in consultation with ED. So thank you for the feedback on this recent update.
Thank you.
Looks like we have a question from Anthony. Thank you for that response, Ari. Anthony, you should have requested mute.
Thank you, Raymond. I don't necessarily have a question, but I just had a general comment that I would like to relay. I've talked a little bit about this in the chat, just haven't had a chance to really vocalize it, and I think it's something important to think about ahead of the next workshop or whatever reports are coming next. But mainly, I do personally still have a concern with the high number of zeros, specifically for the limiting hour circuits at about 38%. It's increased. We didn't really talk about what drove that increase. We didn't really talk about in this workshop as to whether that is a number that is just going to be accepted as what the ICA is able to do or not. I do appreciate that Michael responded in the chat mentioning maybe potentially including a table showing how these zeros are driven by which limiting criteria. And I do agree that is a great starting point of data that I think would be helpful. I mean, in the past, we have seen in the staff proposal voltage being a large driver of these discordant zeros. But we've also seen the EV reports from SCE that show a couple instances of thermal showing zero yet allowing connection. So it hasn't really been a good quantification and correlation of limiting criteria to driving zeros. And even then, it doesn't necessarily put together a plan of any sort to fix the ICA to bring these numbers down, which are not reflective of conditions. And I know these numbers will never be as low as completely matching of existing conditions, but I do think a 38% with currently not necessarily strong correlation to a driver of these high numbers is concerning, and it affects the use of the map and its usefulness and accuracy to users. So generally, I appreciate this presentation. It's been helpful. And I guess going forward, it would especially be helpful if we can track whether the prevalence of the most limiting hour zeros is trending down in response to specific remediations or corrections to drivers that we actually are able to identify and quantify. Because currently it's really unclear, as of the couple workshops we've had and the different discussions on the ICA, still to me, whether these numbers are driven by specific drivers that can be quantified and potentially addressed in one way or not. And they seem to be climbing up, and I'm curious to see how they will be impacted once the rest of the inactive circuits get added. But it's just something I think we should still think about, and I would appreciate more from SCE on that issue in the next presentation and in the next reports. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Anthony. Are there any responses to that or any further questions? I'm hearing silence. So our originally intended break was 10:55 to 11. I think perhaps, a 15-minute break might be more appreciated than a 5-minute break. So I think 11 will be an appropriate time to resume. And also thank you to SCE for showing flexibility in presenting earlier than anticipated and slightly longer than anticipated. I do appreciate that on your end. And I will be speaking with all of you at 11. Thank you. right, everybody, it is 11, so welcome back. PG&E, are you online and ready to present?
Hey Raymond, yep, ready to go.
All right, let you get after it then.
All right, let's get into it. Morning, everyone. I'm Gabriel with PG&E. I'm a grid innovation engineer working on ICA, and thanks for the opportunity for us to present our update on ICA. So I'll be covering publication cadence and data freshness, and how we think about ICA accuracy and zero values, all of which have been brought up and made part of our remediation plan. And then Julia from our team will go over platform updates and go into Q&A. So starting with publication, this is the issue identified on potential outdated ICA results, and it's a fair and valid concern. We want to make sure that we're meeting the CPUC requirement that was issued in 2017. The IOU shall update ICA results for changed circuits, i.e. circuits that have been upgraded or have new DER interconnections on a monthly basis. We just want to make clear that this is different from requiring a refresh of every single circuit every month. We have a framework where we evaluate circuits that need to be refreshed every month and only refresh those. And that's about 10 to 15% of all of our circuits historically. And like I said, that goes through a trigger prioritization framework. So as you can see in this graph, historically it fluctuates, but we are about 300 to 500 circuits per month, and we think that we want to demonstrate that we're compliant. We don't think there's any evidence that says that we're not compliant, but we also need to show that we are. So we're going to continue tracking how many are being triggered every month, and that's part of our remediation plan. So we will be tracking the trigger date for each circuit, and that will be published and available to the public. And that's still slated for the first quarter of 2026. In the graph, you'll see one thing I'll note is a large chunk of our focus in the last quarter has been the scaling up of our Load IC refinements platform. So as the stakeholders might know, we're transitioning to a new vendor, a new platform, implementing more robust features in addition to the refinements. And as we scaled up, we had to do a lot of data quality and debugging work, which attributed to the lower volume in the past few months. But as of October, we've restored our throughput back to normal. Next slide. This is a snapshot of the age of our circuits published, a distribution in for circuits less than 3 months, less than 6 months, 9 months, year, and 2 years. So in the purple, you'll see that in September, we had that dip, which was disclosed in the previous slide. That is why that you see a drop off in circuits that are older than 3 months. But now we're on the ramp up again, and we expect that to continue to rise, where we have the majority of circuits more towards the left of these boxes.
There's a question. Sky has her hand up. Sky, I believe, have a request to unmute.
Thanks. Hi, Gabriel. Thanks for this. Can you tell me, for the months shown on this chart, how many circuits, and I'm using the commission's language here, how many changed circuits were updated? Or how many circuits were changed in those months? So I see, what I understand here is you're telling us how many circuits, either numerically or by percentage, were updated, but I don't have the corresponding reference to how many were changed to understand if you're doing all of them that had changed or not.
You're talking about the previous slide, right?
I'm talking about both these slides. I'm talking
Right.
about you're telling me how many in this slide. I understand that you're telling me how many you updated on each month, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And what I need to know to understand if that number is a good number or the right number is how many needed to be updated because they were, quote, changed in the previous month. So knowing that there were 720 doesn't tell me anything if I don't know if there were 720 change circuits or if there were 2,000 change circuits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly why we will be tracking the trigger dates. I think until we get that feature implemented, we won't be able to tell you exactly which circuits change. But the way that our monthly cycle works is if a circuit changes, either the devices on the circuit or the load on it or generation changes, then they will be prioritized by the degree of that change. So the ones that change the most will get pushed to the front, and there's essentially a queue.
Right. So to be clear, then what this table doesn't show the public is that you are updating every change circuit every month. It shows you how many have been updated, but you don't have the data to show us if that number corresponds to the number that we're actually in need of an update.
That's right. Not until Q1.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, next slide. So this slide is addressing the stakeholder concern about IC accuracy and rising zeros. Just to reiterate a few points we made last time, that ICA is a baseline screening tool model. It does not factor in any planned upgrades yet. It is basically indicating the capacity on the system currently. So before any upgrades or operational mitigations. So that a mitigation or upgrade, whether it's minor or not, that is separately determined in an engineering review when an actual application is submitted. So that would include a fuse upgrade or a voltage device setting change, which are minor, but you will not see that in ICA. For good reason as well. We don't want to assume that those are going to happen because they're not uniformly applicable everywhere and not always desired operationally. And that's just the reality of ICA as a baseline screening tool. It shows the state of the distribution grid as is. I think most people here understand that. We do strive to make sure ICA is as useful as possible. That is why we've written in our remediation plan the reporting of data comparing our load ICA values at the time of interconnection to the actual outcome for each application. So that's part of our ACE project, our automatic capacity evaluator, which was previously known as the internal ICA use case. And this will establish a baseline and support future data-driven model calibrations and also customer messaging. So I guess in other words, a zero doesn't mean interconnection is impossible. It just means that a review is needed. And there could be minor adjustments in which IC does not assume an interconnection is possible. So in our next report, we're going to refresh this table of EV loads for Rule 29 and show more examples of where this might occur. And this is a very manual process that we report any of these reports. Once we are able to implement this remediation plan, we will be able to systematically report on this metric. So we can look at every application that goes through and see how useful is our results and to the customer and tweak our model and strive towards better usefulness. Next slide. So the only update for this is, I guess I'll just briefly go through it. So there are other challenges that we're addressing, not just demonstrating IC accuracy, but also it's addressing a need for the high volume of applications that we're receiving due to electrification. With the same resources that we have now, we're we are struggling to keep up with the volume. And there's also the customer side of it, which is the lack of visibility into our capacity constraints. So what's happening is they're submitting applications and it's taking a long time for us to provide that answer to them. Like, can we interconnect or not? We don't have that because one is due to resources, and two is due to the complexity of the data they need to submit. So they need to submit detailed load data to us when they want to interconnect. And not all of the time is that data in the right format, correctly calculated. So this solution addresses that as well. So we are going to be automatically calculating the customer's load, and we will be automatically integrating the hosting capacity result for each application. And that way the customer will know very quickly on whether they should incorporate an interconnection risk into their project rather than waiting 3 to 6 months in some cases that we see now. So, and of course, we will be using this to address the IC accuracy issue as well. So tracking all of these results in a database and being able to quantitatively assess the usefulness of ICA. So the approval was just granted on the 9th through the disposition letter. We will reevaluate the timeline, which was originally for the end of this year, but we have not, we're unable to move on that until we had that approval granted. So we'll report on that in the report.
Looks like we have a question from Sky. Should have requested unmute.
Hi, thanks. This is a kind of wonky question, Gabriel, and I'm not sure if it's best for you, for Raymond, or somebody else on your team, so bear with me. I saw that the Energy Division approved the advice letter a week or two ago, and that one of the things I'm wondering is, so my understanding from the advice letter is that there's a cost associated with doing this. That's principally a cost associated with developing the automatic capacity evaluator. And my wonky question is, how is that cost going to be tracked and recorded? My sense is that the automatic capacity evaluator has potential to be valuable to customers, but is not actually a load ICA cost. And I want to make sure that there's good accounting so that we have a sense of what the costs are that are associated with the ICA versus costs associated with developing this automatic capacity evaluator. So my question either for you or for Raymond or for somebody is, how are you guys going to be tracking and accounting for the costs of the ACE?
Yes. So in our previous filings, we've already gotten the approval from the commission to include this in the ICA budget, and that's what we're tracking it currently.
Okay,
So
will
this
it be
is fundamentally
tracked?
a workflow using ICA.
Will it be tracked separately? So like we'll be able to see what was an automatic capacity evaluator cost, or is it just going to be thrown into like the bigger ICA costs?
So I can,
Unfortunately-
yeah, Gabriel, you want me to take
No,
this?
go ahead.
So, yeah, so actually all costs, there is no like ICA account, first of
I
all.
know.
There's a DRP tools memo account. So this would be under that memo account. So if you were speaking more broadly as to where it would go, that's where it would go. To the extent we do, we've created, from an accounting perspective, we have created an order number associated with this work. So to the extent there's interest from a data party, from stakeholders, that data should be pullable. But from a, regulatory perspective, it's the only requirement really is that it's under the memo account, as is also ICA costs, as is other tools.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's not that it can't be visible, but like from a regular, our current plan is that it would be under that memo account.
Okay, it would be under the memo account, but if somebody did it at a request, they would be able to parse out what the actual ACE cost is separate from the other things that are tracked in the memo account.
Yeah, we've created an order number for
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Thanks for that explanation, Bill.
And I believe DRP TMA costs are then actually reviewed and approved through the GRC process as well, where it would likely be broken out more clearly.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that the memo account is part of the GRC process. And we certainly get a lot of data requests there too. Yep.
Okay, next slide. So we're bringing back this slide. It's the same slide that you see in our reports. It's the distribution of ICA values in different buckets. Probably the most interesting one is the 0 ICA values. So we've held steady in this 30% range, partly because we haven't updated circuits for the past 3 months due to the scaling up issue, which we've already resolved at this point. But we should see more definitive data as time goes on. So looking forward to our full refresh of our entire system and seeing how that impacts this graph. But with our most recent refresh in October, where we had that big spike in circuits that ran through, looks like we're still in that same range, which shows that there's no huge anomalies that have been uncovered. Okay, next slide. Julie, you want to take over?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Thank you. Yep, thanks, Gabriel. So I will be covering a couple of slides about the data portal portion. So as we discussed in SC's presentation, we did just release this limiting criteria information. We implemented similarly to SCE. We understood the language to be that we were meant to publish the limiting criteria type, I guess. So you can see that in these screenshots for the LICA, the load ICA data, in the pop-ups, we have the analysis date, the hosting capacity, and then which limiting criteria is the limit that corresponds to that published hosting capacity. So in the screenshot on the right, you can see that the thermal loading is the limiting criteria for the hosting capacity of about 2 megawatts is limited by thermal ICA. So we're very happy. That was a significant amount of work for us, but we got it up. We also successfully published our October, November, and we just started our December, publications. From the data portal side, I do want to congratulate the ICA team. Made a little more work for our data portal team because this was a huge volume of circuits that we've been publishing recently. So that's one of the outstanding bugs that we have, actually. So this huge volume of circuits, it took an incredible amount of computation time to publish through the GIS systems. And so we did have to temporarily take down our LGP chart data because we couldn't keep up. It was taking 4 weeks to publish, to update the ICA data that the team did. We will get that up shortly. We do have the LGP, the hourly data, still up and available for LGP applications, and we provided some workarounds. But that is one outstanding bug type issue that we have, and we are hoping to resolve it in January or Q1. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please.
We actually have a hand up from Sky.
Yep.
Sky, request to unmute sent.
Hey there. Okay, I have two questions here. One simple one on the slide showing now on the Mount Eden box. It says abnormal voltages is the limiting criteria. I don't know which,
Yes.
can you tell me more about what that criteria is? My understanding
Yeah.
is that you have, yeah, go ahead, you get it.
So thank you. Good question. So this is actually, we are doing a data update to fix this right now. So I think you know PG&E, we publish 4 limiting criteria types, right? Well, 5 now, I think. We have thermal, voltage, protection, safety, and we've split out safety bank to indicate reverse flow through to the transmission system through the substation bank, right? So essentially 5. The different IOUs, I believe, have some of them break out voltage into different types, like steady state voltage or voltage variation. We usually just publish voltage, but where that value is coming from, that abnormal voltages, is that there was a little bit more granularity temporarily. We are going to adjust that. We're working on an update that should come out tomorrow or so that will make everything more aligned. So abnormal voltages at the moment should be only 2 days up there, but it's voltage.
And by voltage, you guys aren't going to start separating out the voltage variation and the steady state voltage. So it could either be one or the other.
Yeah. Separating it out is not part of our plan right now.
Okay. I would strongly encourage and love it if you would make it part of the plan.
Okay.
So
Could you?
and we've
So
noted multiple times. And
really
then
quick,
go ahead. Yeah.
Sky, sorry. I have a memory like Swiss cheese right now. Would you mind well, I guess we can follow up actually about that. We've got everyone here. But if you submit that to the GRIP email box or to Jessica as well, and she can send it there for our tracking purposes, we do try to track all of the feedback and the comments we get. It'll help us add it to our roadmap. Is that okay?
Yeah, I will.
I can also send that email.
I will open an email right now and
thank you.
Note it. I think we have noted it in comments, but I'm happy to send you guys an email again. Okay, so then I hope I didn't lose my train of thought. My second question was, so I understood when you were talking about this bug that you guys took down the detailed ICA downloads, is that right?
No, we're able to keep up with that, the chart on the data portal. So we have, we were really excited about this earlier this year, but alas, it was we weren't able to upkeep it. We're working on the back end fix. But we had a chart that had the hourly ICA data, right? Sorry, so a little more context. So in order to publish the hourly ICA data for LGP customers on the data portal, we published it in multiple ways. So it is accessible through the downloadable CSV files like all of the IOUs have. We were also able to publish it in a tabular format where because of the size of this data set, it was like 2 billion rows or something.
Yeah.
We published it in a columnar format where we had 288 columns instead of 288 rows to represent each hour. So that significantly decreased the size of the data set, and that data is still up and available on the map interface. However, we also published it in a format that the map chart could read, which did require the 288 rows. So that data set we were not able to keep up with it. And so the chart visualization tool is not available at the moment for the LGP, for the hourly ICA. The data, the data was technically wrong because we couldn't keep up. The data is still all available and up to date and looking good in the other formats, and users can still click into it. It's on the map interface. It's just that one visualization. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think it does. Let me provide a little comment on that, but I think
Yes.
because it would be helpful. I've, as you know, because we've had quite a bit of correspondence about this, I looked carefully at the way those things were showing up, but I haven't looked in a couple weeks. But here's my comment question for further consideration.
Yes.
And this may be helpful for you guys or not. My perception, again, not wearing my IRA cap, but helping clients who are actually trying to look at the data on the map to determine if they could use an LGP. So take this as a customer user input, is that showing the data on a chart in the map is not usable. It's too, like, both sounds like too complicated from a data standpoint, but also like you have to be able to download it to look at it. Like it's not gonna. I would be surprised if customers are able to extract much information from it that way. Now, I am only a single person, so you should consult with users. But if you are struggling with the data part, and I like, and its ability to keep up, my sense is that you guys could use conversations like this or another time to actually talk about customers about what would be useful and how they're using the LGP data. We have provided you feedback from multiple different customers about the frustration about the downloadable CSV not having the profiles pre-programmed in, which
Right.
your peer utilities did, which has been very useful. And you pointed us to like all the data in the map, but that actually hasn't been useful. So again, I'm
Okay.
talking vaguely because it's kind of hard to describe all the different pieces.
Yeah.
Is if you are struggling from a data standpoint, maybe what it makes sense to do is baseline with customers about what would be most useful rather than trying to fix something that you don't know if it's what customers really need, and focus on the things that they would find most helpful.
Okay. Yeah, that is really good feedback. We've had one other person mention that they would like the data in the downloadable format that the other IOUs have. And so this is our second time. Thank you. Let me be clear, through the direct contact with customers outside these workshops and stuff. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That knowledge, that feedback. I've got it written down because Swiss cheese memory. Are we good to move on, or should we? Do you have follow-up? Anyone has further follow-ups about that, or questions about what we had to temporarily take down?
I'm not seeing any raised hands or questions in chat.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on. Thank you. So we are working on, we did want to share, as you all know, we updated our data portal platform, re-engineered everything, and the LGP data was not, the data pipeline was not sufficient for the volume that we have at the moment, but part of that is that we're trying to track customer usage. So this is in progress. At the moment, this is the last 2 months or so of views per day. So it's not unique views, it's not unique users. We are working with the platform owner to get more useful data, but it is exciting and interesting. 15,000 or so views in the last 2 months. Again, not unique users or anything, but it is getting used a lot, and we have had really good comments. I do want to mention to the CPUC, Energy Division staff, we have had multiple comments about people being very glad that it's completely public now. So, and also a little bit to Sky's and Sam's comments earlier about we didn't get very many requests to make it completely public, but now that it is, people are very happy about that. So it's getting used, very exciting. We're improving and working to make it better. And we will iterate on this and try to get better usage data to share. I think, yeah, we've got text, but I think that's Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Are there any questions? There would be. Sky, request to unmute.
Yeah, this is kind of a question for all the IOUs, but I'm wondering if you guys know if you've had any LGP applications submitted yet.
I do know. I think in the interest of protecting customer privacy and our aggregation rules, we cannot give you very much about that. There have not been very many applications.
So there have been some applications, but not very many. I don't need individual customer data.
Well, Scott, we could probably provide more, right? I think it's less than 5, right? Julia, like I don't think that's a customer confidential.
Less than 5.
And Bill, can you, my question following from it was sort of like, what are you guys doing with customers to understand like why or why not and whether it's working? I have a lot of, it does not surprise me that there's a small number, and I think there's a lot of complicated reasons around that. But I often, what the feedback I've been getting from companies is like, it's like they're having a hard time figuring out how to do it. That does not mean that will, once they figure out how to do it, that they will actually be able to apply for LGB, because there just might not be sites that make sense, etc. But I'm wondering if the IOUs are engaging in a way to make sure that people do actually know how to develop a profile using the tool. And so we'd like to skip over the problem of people not submitting applications just because they can't get through to the data in a meaningful way, versus it's just that there isn't a site that makes sense. And it may be both, but I spent a lot of time with this is not targeted to just PG&E, but you guys have had some particular challenges, which is like, it's like really difficult to try to even figure out how to use the data right now to meaningfully do it. And so I want to make sure that there is some sort of feedback loop, and that, because you guys are doing such good, all of you are doing good work to try to make it usable, but it doesn't sound to me like there's a more formalized effort to get that feedback from customers, besides like if they email you autonomously. So that was a long commentary. I apologize. The question is, do you have any plans? Or are you doing anything in particular to talk with customers about how to use the LGP, and what getting some feedback from them on whether they find it usable or not?
Well, I would say that we haven't received any like strong indications that the usability is the reason for the lack of applications. It doesn't mean it's not, though. We do have to prioritize our work too, right? So like, we've been pretty focused on a few other things that we've been doing on the ICA, including the Load ICA use case. But I think that, I think that we do take the feedback about usability for LGP importantly, but we are seeing a lot of use, as we were just showing with the ICA data. So we have, tens of thousands of customers. That's not new, that we've had tens of thousands, we've had lots of customers using the ICA data. So, and it's also like, how do you find that customer that might actually want to do an LGP? Right? It's like having to search for that. So, but I think it's making it more so that it's easier for people to reach out to us might be the better. But to put, I would say at this point, we don't have like we're not prioritizing like a major outreach program to try to go, increase LGP usage. But if there is a usability issue, would be good. Definitely want to know it. And we probably should, as we can probably think back, like make sure our portal is clear, that there's a place for people to communicate with us. And we're always trying to refresh our user guides and things too.
Okay. Well, thank you. I will say I do think some more proactive efforts could be helpful. We've talked about, for example, having a training online that would be available to guide people through the portal, and including LGP and how to use it, and that would be helpful. My other question for you guys is, just because it wasn't noted in your slides anywhere, is the last workshop, you indicated that you were working on some sort of potential fix for the really significant problem that we have with respect to data redaction for the substation bank criteria. Do you have any update on that?
So I remember the questions, Guy, from last time. I think that was more regarding to the negative 99 value we were seeing. And we clarified that negative 99 value meant it was being redacted. I think we took the question as, are we working on a solution to the negative 99 value, not the fact that it's redacted itself. So I think there's some miscommunication there.
Okay, well, why don't you speak to the 99 value and then let's talk about the bigger problem.
Unfortunately, Ravi is not on the call right now. I'm not sure, Julia, would you know what the
if I remember correctly, and Swiss cheese again, sorry. I think the main issue with the negative 99.99 that we were using to indicate redaction was that it kind of broke the chart visualization, which is no longer available. We had to take it down. So
well, that's what it's just like, parties didn't know what it meant. They didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
Why was there a negative value? Like,
right.
it was just a basic, like, what is this actually telling me problem, right?
Yes, it is very clear. We adjusted our user guides to make that more clear, and we added Swiss cheese. I forgot. We added text within the chart shortly after that workshop that said what the negative 99 value meant. But again, that's not available at the moment.
So, thank you. And then, Julia, are you guys, I mean, is there any, let's start with, like, so everyone else can level set on this. What percentage of nodes don't have hosting capacity results as a result of the redaction of the safety bank value?
So at the ICA level, none, because of the aggregation.
I don't understand.
So at the value where you have a single ICA result for each node, right, the limiting value for the year, there are no redaction issues. There's
explain that again. What do you mean? So you're not redacting anymore?
We are redacting it still, but because of we determined it's not possible to back calculate it from that single value. You can't. I'm sorry, I'm not speaking very well. So we have in our downloadable files, right, the ICA results that we have 576 for 5 criteria results. So that's 2,000 values or so. If the safety bank values are redacted, or the safety values have been redacted, when you bring those 2,000 values down to a single value, the limit for the year, right? Which is what we're color coding the map with, we determined it's not really possible to back calculate or determine very much about a single customer if we just have that single value. So like, for example, if it was a safety bank value that was the limit, let's say at midnight in April or something, or 10 a.m. in April, we would have that, and the thermal values and the voltage values were all above that. We would have that single limiting value available on the map. The issue came in when we have the LGP, right? Because then you can potentially back calculate information that might reveal private customer energy usage data. I think that we did have some initial discussions about it, about what we might possibly do. To Bill's point about prioritizing, the team has worked really hard on. That wasn't the priority. The priority was getting the ICA data up, improving our throughput and resolving the bugs with the transition.
Okay.
We did, oh, yeah, go for it.
Raymond, this is a critical issue. The LGP cannot be done for a significant number of locations in PG&E's territory. We spoke about it at the last workshop. They told me they were working on something. It was not mentioned in the slides here. They are just telling us that they're prioritizing something else. So it's up to you guys at the Energy Division to decide if you think people should be able to do the LGP in PG&E's territory and to find a solution for this. Rule 21 does not mention safety bank. That is not an authorized usage under any order from this commission. I don't oppose it. It's a technically necessary thing, but there's multiple ways of doing it because the other IOUs do not have the safety bank criteria. This is a highly important issue and it needs attention, and the utilities, if these workshops are going to be valuable, should be required to come with solutions to problems that make the data totally unfunctional. I really always appreciate Julia's earnestness and the hard work of the team. But it's the commission's job to say what's priorities, and they're clearly violating the commission orders right now. There is no mention of a safety bank in any order that has authorized the use of it. We may need it, but we need it in a functional way, and the commission should be engaging with PG&E to make sure it is functional. The LGP is functional. It was a key part of developing the LGP that you be able to see and use the data. And I appreciate that they've concluded that you don't need it for the single value, but what they're saying is that for the LGP overall, it will not be usable. And we've asked in previous meetings that the other IOUs talk about how they're handling this issue and why there's a difference between PG&E and Edison and San Diego. Could be one starting point as to determining why PG&E's is not functional and the others are. But I would ask the commission to try to address real issues in these workshops in a productive way, and make sure that the utilities are required to present on things that the parties have repeatedly asked about. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Sky. And yeah, I'll follow up with the Rule 21 team and their ICA expert as well. And PG&E, we will be in contact with you about this.
Okay, yeah, understood. I'll just, we think we do view the LGP as functional, but I think having a conversation about this safety bank issue makes sense. Thank you.
Bill, can you explain what you mean by it being functional?
I mean, we have people using it. So I think it's just the way you characterized it as like our LGP is not functional. But understood.
If I want to do an LGP on a site where you've redacted the safety bank, is it functional?
Well, I can understand how for that, we have to investigate that specific situation. Agreed. I can't answer the question right now. But I think you're implying that like our LGP across our territory was not functional. That's how I took what you were saying.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that, and you don't have the statistic handy, which I think is notable itself, that in my clients that have tried to do the LGP, in almost all cases have encountered 0 values for the safety bank or redacted values. So it has not been functional to date. We have talked with you about this. It's not a non-known issue. And when you say you have to look into it, does that mean you haven't looked into it yet? Or you're just not ready to admit that actually it's redacted all over and so people can't do an LGP? I'm not trying to pin you down like whatever. I just am, it is a problem. And it sounds like you're saying it's functional and it's not a problem.
That's not what I was trying to say. I wasn't trying to say it's not. Our expert on this is out sick today, so that's part of it. So we will need to go back and have a conversation about it. And I agree, us having a conversation with ED makes sense.
Okay.
Ben Ellis, I do see your hand raised. Oh, your hand is down. Eric Martineau, who is from ED. Request unmute.
Yeah, thanks. I just thought I'd chime in following this previous exchange. that as a person who is responsible for LGP and also ICA from the interconnection side of things, from the interconnection team in the energy division, I was aware of the redaction issue from previous discussions, but I was not aware until this time that there was a implication or relevance for LGP, or whether LGP is functional or non-functional in particular locations. So yeah, I am quite concerned about this, and am really just understanding this now, the interaction, the connection. So I would echo the fact that we really do need to understand exactly how much of PG&E territory is being affected by the redaction issue, and what alternatives may exist. And also just to say that this never came up in any LGP discussion of which I am aware, and I should have been, and I believe I was aware of virtually all of them. So yeah, just to say that. Thank you.
Thank you for that addition, Eric. We have a request to present. And Alice, I see you have a hand up. I think you have something else to add.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, Ben Ellis. I am the legal rep for PG&E, and I just wanted to respond to Sky real quick regarding the redacted data. I think at this point, until we can find a way to sufficiently anonymize or aggregate that data, we have to protect it. And I do agree that we need to figure this out, but it will take a discussion with ED and parties to figure out how to do that.
Looks like Sky has a hand up in response to that.
Thanks. And just to be clear, Ben, and I appreciate that, IREC's position isn't that you should be sharing customer data, but there, as I've noted, there are probably multiple different ways of approaching what a solution could be. One solution is just to say, sorry, we don't publish data. The other is to say, well, why does PG&E's ICA have a safety bank criteria and not the other IOUs? And what could we do to make it useful for customers? And why did we make this decision without thinking about and talking transparently with the energy division and stakeholders before we made the decision to require the safety bank value, which was not discussed in any public forum? So IREC agrees that we can't publish customer data. That violates the 1515 rule. We've been very clear about that, but that is not the end of the discussion. And it shouldn't have been a decision that was made without discussion first, when you decided to start requiring the safety bank value.
Okay, yeah, I agree. We need to continue to work on this, but this is an organic process and it is still being figured out as we go. So we will take your comments and suggestions. We'll try and figure out how to incorporate them to ED's specifications, and we'll make this work for everybody.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Doesn't look like it. And Helga, can we move to the next slide, please? All right, that does conclude the workshop for today, but I will go over a few last details. One, this workshop was recorded and we do post them to the CPUC YouTube. They are eventually posted on the distribution planning webpage, but if you would like the recording sooner than that, you can reach out to me directly. My email is provided at the end of the presentation. I also wanted to quickly outline what the next steps are. So it's a little procedural, but regarding the remediation plans, they are tier 3 advice letters, which means they have to go to resolution for the commission, meaning a resolution will be drafted, which will then be released to the public on the voting calendar, I believe, and also the HIDER proceeding service list. That will then go to a comment period, which can then be modified, and then will go to a voting meeting. I will note that the resolution has to be released at least 30 days before the voting meeting in which it would be applied. So the January 15th voting meeting would not be the one this would be actionable upon, but there are 2 voting meetings in February. So I would keep your eyes out if you would like to file on the record and substantive comments on a draft resolution regarding this. And again, once that is eventually hammered out and when approved, that will become the basis for reporting in the biannual reports and also what is being updated in these workshops. So I want to thank you all again for being here, and I hope you have a great day, and don't be afraid to reach out. With that, goodbye.